Happy Friday, everyone. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Jaein in Seoul. Before we get started, here's a look at today's highlights. President Moon Jae-in and U.S. President Donald Trump hold talks over a number of issues at a dinner in Washington on Thursday, and there are questions over where the Korea-U.S. FTA may be headed. From the latest on Toshiba missing its self-imposed deadline for the sale of its memory chip business to new investment plans by President Moon's business delegation in the U.S., we take a look at what global business stories made headlines this week. President Moon Jae-in on his first trip to the U.S. since being elected in May, alongside First Lady Kim Jong-suk, joined U.S. President Donald Trump and his wife for dinner at the White House on Thursday, where they discussed various issues, including the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. Our Moon Jae-in files this report from Washington, D.C.
No drama, no buzz, just a nice handshake and pleasantries. The very first meeting between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump, perhaps to the disappointment of many who had hoped to see some sort of a drama play out before a global audience, couldn't have been any smoother. Before the close to the media dinner, the U.S. president anticipated an engaging discussion with his South Korean counterpart.
Discussing with our people some of the complexities of North Korea and trade and other things, and we'll be discussing them all as we progress, and it could be very well late into the evening. We very much respect you, and we very much respect the people of South Korea.
Over a nicely prepared course meal and definitely carefully selected menu, the main dish of the evening being Korean traditional dish bibimbap, made with South Carolina-produced long grains. The two leaders agreed to together establish peace in the Korean peninsula and achieve economic prosperity based on steadfast South Korea-U.S. alliance.
The two leaders held constructive discussions on various issues surrounding the Korean peninsula. Their talks were frank, candid, and serious all the way through. But I would like to ask for your understanding, as I cannot disclose the details based on an agreement between the two countries.
The senior Blue House official added that President Moon told his U.S. counterpart that if President Trump resolves North Korea's nuclear problem, it would be a great success that no other U.S. president has ever been able to do before, and Mr. Trump would become a great president. Meanwhile, minutes after saying goodnight to South Korea's first couple, President Trump tweeted that he had just wrapped up a very good meeting with South Korean president and that the two discussed many things, including North Korea and a new trade deal. Now, when asked about this new trade deal, Mr. Moon's press team avoided giving a clear answer, alluding to a possible announcement by the two leaders after their official bilateral summit Friday morning. As they say, you grow fond eating together, wine and dine, and those things the two presidents did today. And on the eve of the first bilateral summit between the two leaders, the mood here in Washington isn't bad at all. Reporting from the U.S. Capitol, Moon Jae-in, Business Daily.
The 12th G20 summit will be held on July 7th and 8th in Hamburg, Germany. According to the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, the meetings will focus on international cooperation to tackle uncertainty in the global economy following Brexit and rate hikes by the U.S. Federal Reserve. Discussions on free trade is likely to take center stage amid the rise in global trade protectionism. Climate change is also expected to come into focus in the wake of the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord in June. Cheong and the White House have confirmed that the leaders of Korea, the U.S., and Japan will be meeting on the sidelines on July 6th, following invitations from U.S. President Donald Trump. Many observers are speculating the three leaders will reaffirm trilateral ties and discuss cooperative efforts to address the North Korean issue. Korea's industrial production fell in May from the previous month as output in the services sector dwindled while consumption slowed. But the government says it's still confident that the Korean economy is on a recovery track and attributed the production fall to seasonal factors. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Output across all industries in Korea dropped 0.3% in May from the previous month, the second straight month it declined. Data released by Statistics Korea on Friday shows that production in the manufacturing sector edged up by 0.2% on month, largely due to increased output of semiconductors and electronic components. But output in the services sector dropped by 0.3%, the first time in 7 months it edged down. Consumption also waned as retail sales dropped by nearly 1% from the previous month, the steepest decline since January, despite the holiday at the start of May. But the statistics agency says it's too early to say the recovery momentum has hit a standstill, as it sees the downward trend as temporary, largely due to the base effect being impacted by record high output in Korea's services and retail sectors in April. It also says that people briefly postponed their holiday spending in May, staying indoors due to high levels of fine dust. The statistics agency referred to improved consumer sentiment in recent months. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
And just in time for the busy summer vacation season, a new highway connecting Seoul to Korea's east coast will open later tonight. The Korea Expressway Corporation announced the new Dongsa Highway will be open to traffic starting at 8 p.m. tonight. The new highway will cut travel time between Seoul and the eastern city of Yangyang by 40 minutes to just 1 hour and 30 minutes. It's the northernmost highway drivers can take to reach the country's eastern coast. The Korean equity market ended the month of June on a bit of a down note. After hitting record highs, the Kospi fell as investors took profits on the last trading day of the month. To give us a wrap-up of this week's stock market action, our markets contributor Choi Jin-seok joins us in the studio today. Hello, Jin-seok.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so how did things look on the last trading day of June?
Both the Kospi and the Kosdaq market were somewhat sluggish in the last session of the week. The Kospi fell by 0.16% to close at 2391.79, while the Kosdaq ticked up 0.16% to close at 669. During yesterday's session, the Kospi index rose to as high as 2402, surpassing 2400 for the first time ever. It took about a month for the market to rise by another 100 points after hitting 2300 in May. However, investors decided to take profits during today's session due to steep recent gains. Both foreigners and institutional investors unloaded shares to drag down the index, while retail investors were the only net buyers. By sector, technology and construction were the worst performers, while communications, steel, and chemicals performed relatively strongly. The Kospi was also affected by overnight losses on Wall Street, weighed by sharp falls in U.S. tech shares.
Now, how was the overall performance of the Korean market then?
The Korean equity market was mostly flat for the week. The Kospi rose slightly, while the Kosdaq didn't move much, falling by a relatively small margin. Large cap stocks performed relatively strongly compared to small to mid cap stocks as well. On the Kospi market, institutional investors unloaded massive amounts of shares, but the index managed to stay in positive territory, helped by retail investors' stock buying. Also, sectors including financials and technology were underpinned by rising Q2 earnings expectations, cushioning the broader Kospi market. By sector, semiconductors, securities, and steel and non-metal materials performed strongly in the week, while consumer staples, utilities, and food and beverage were sluggish.
Now, despite today's weak performance, the Kospi did rally throughout this month.
Right. Today was the last session of the month, so it's a good chance to take a look at the monthly performances of the Kospi market. The index surged almost 2% in June, rising for 7 consecutive months for the first time ever. The Kospi market had risen 6 straight months on 3 previous occasions, but never for 7 consecutive months. One of the positive aspects of June's market performance is that retail investors were also net buyers for the month. In other words, individual investors were not shut out from recent gains in the Kospi. Experts project the index can rise 3 to 7% more within 2017, but due to the sharp short-term rally, experts also warn profit-taking can take place at any time, just like today.
Now, moving on for a broader look at other Asian markets, Chinese shares are still seeing windfalls from the MSCI's decision to include China's A shares in its emerging market index.
Despite today's relatively weak performance, the Shanghai Composite Index rose by almost 1% this week, and MSCI's decision continued to boost the market. After MSCI's decision, investors now have higher expectations of more capital inflows. As a result, risk appetites toward the Shanghai market have been revitalized. Other than MSCI's decision, rising commodity prices also helped boost the sentiment in the Chinese market. Commodity-related sectors led the rally, specifically during the latter part of this week. One potential headwind for the Chinese market, though, is the People's Bank of China, or the PBOC's stance on further tightening. The PBOC continued to stop its reverse repo operation throughout the week.
And how's the weekly performance of the Japanese equity market?
Excluding today's session, Japan's Nikkei 225 index had enjoyed a 0.4% weekly gain. Most importantly, the yen has been stable throughout the week, and this cleared up a lot of uncertainty in the market. The U.S. Federal Reserve, or the Fed, announced all major banks passed a stress test for the first time since the financial crisis, and the announcement lifted investors' sentiment in the Japanese financial sector. However, the Japanese market plummeted during today's session, hurting its overall weekly performance. First, a steep correction in the U.S. technology sector damaged Japan's tech stocks, and as global equity markets closed on a sluggish note, gains in the yen also weighed on Japanese shares as well.
All right, thank you so much for the wrap-up today.
Thank you.
Oil prices have risen in 4 straight sessions and are still edging up. The West Texas Intermediate crude for August delivery is up 19 cents, or 0.4%, at almost $45 per barrel. Brent crude, the global oil benchmark, is also higher at around $47.50 a barrel. A dip in U.S. crude output has dampened concerns of a supply glut. Last week, daily U.S. crude production fell by 100,000 barrels for a weekly output of 9.3 million barrels. This is the biggest decline in weekly output since last July. Small business owners here in Korea are finding themselves in more debt, with their total outstanding loans rising sharply. And in light of this worrying trend, the government is keeping a closer eye on the country's loan market, especially on non-bank lenders. Our Elliot Kim has more.
Here's Chung Dae-hee. He runs a restaurant with his brother. While he has already repaid the nearly $90,000 loan he took out to start the business, news of potential interest rate hikes have left him concerned, since he doesn't know when he might need to take out another loan.
Self-employed people have all taken out loans, and if interest rates rise, it'll only become harder to repay them.
Self-employed people are worried about the added burden from rising interest rates. Outstanding loans were tallied at $455 billion at the end of last year, according to the Financial Supervisory Service. The figure represents a $175 billion surge over a period of 4 years.
Recently, self-employed people have taken out a lot of loans due to the recession. If interest rates rise now, the already fragile household finances of the self-employed will be put in further jeopardy.
The Bank of Korea also conducted a study on the correlation between rising interest rates and likelihood of business closures. The central estimated a 1% rise in interest rates would increase the risk of business closures by 70% for retailers and 106% for restaurants and lodging businesses. With concerns mounting over small business loans, financial authorities have decided to closely examine the country's loan market. The Financial Supervisory Service said they will monitor loan screening procedures of non-bank lenders such as Nonghyup, Suhyup, and Shinhyup. After a 1-month oversight period, they plan to introduce customized loan measures for different types of small businesses. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
Now, when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, we tend to think of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and other technological innovations. But how will this affect our income and the way we work? Our Oh Soo-young spoke to some experts at a forum here in Seoul.
How will the fourth industrial revolution affect our wallets? At a forum in southern Seoul, experts discussed how the Korean society should adapt to the changing nature of jobs and its inevitable impact on our livelihoods. According to OECD studies, Korean workers are at the lowest risk of being replaced by machines due to their high level of education and tasks that are hard to automate. Still, with technological advancements expected to create new fields of work and at the very least play a supportive role in traditional jobs, working hours and conditions are expected to become more flexible and subject to change. Experts say without more proactive social policies, the so-called gig economy may only add to low job security and income polarization currently faced by Korean households. This calls for stronger social safety nets, such as basic income distribution, as well as new labour policies to ensure job mobility without instability. Moreover, with machines carrying out more repetitive and predictable tasks, future jobs will require more creative and human-centred roles.
We will need service jobs that involve high interaction. Individuals will develop professions in areas of personal interest, creating their own niche in jobs like life coaching, retirement planning, or personal information management.
This will redefine how we value work and productivity, from material-driven to socially beneficial. To help facilitate new services and innovations of this kind, experts stress the need for education in utilising data, artificial intelligence and platform technology. Until now, much of the focus has been on how to drive the advancement of new technologies, but experts say it's high time that Korea works towards a social consensus to ensure that the so-called revolution also changes society for the better. Oh Soo-young, Business Daily.
Recently, food companies have been educating consumers about healthy foods and good eating habits, hoping to secure more long-term customers who are conscious of their health. Our Lee Joo-young has the story.
These kids are making fresh juice using ingredients like leafy spinach, apples, and bananas. It's a fun, engaging activity for the children who help prepare the drinks and sample their own creations.
It's good, and I think it'll make me prettier.
The automatic juicer captures their attention, keeping them interested while they wait for the final product to come out. It is hoped activity like these can satisfy the children's taste buds so that they not only enjoy sweet tooth cravings like chocolate and candy, but healthy foods as well.
Eating habits are formed from the ages of 3 to 5. We're trying to get kids to eat lots of fruits and vegetables.
In addition to children who haven't yet formed their eating habits, food companies are trying to cater to other demographic groups as well. They have targeted young adults in their 20s and 30s who often prefer to eat out. Food giant Sempyo, for example, has closely analyzed the flavors of Korean food staples, ranging from peppers to garlic, so they can educate customers about flavor profiles, how ingredients interact with each other, and how different flavors can combine to create new ones.
We started this research to make people more aware of the values of Korean culinary culture, which I believe will aid in the advancement of Korean food.
Big box store E-Mart has also started a campaign to raise awareness of healthy eating habits.
Many people nowadays eat or drink alone. We're encouraging customers in their 20s and 30s to buy ingredients and prep their own meals, and made a video to promote this idea.
E-Mart adds that while it's aware that R&D efforts to develop new recipes may not directly impact sales, they're hoping indirect marketing strategies like recipe sharing can improve the firm's relationship with current and future customers, which could lead to increased sales down the line. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
Time now for a look at some of the important global business headlines from the week with our Eunice Kim joining us in the studio today. Hello, Eunice.
Hello.
All right, so let's start with the Toshiba story, where its annual shareholders meeting came and went this week with no apparent deal on its chip unit sale.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Toshiba had that self-imposed deadline on Wednesday, June 28th. Toshiba's executives had to face some pretty frustrated investors as they admitted they'd not arrived at an agreement with its preferred bidder, the consortium that includes Bain Capital, Korea's SK Hynix, and a state-backed investment fund. This does come as Toshiba is locked in a dispute with its former U.S. partner, Western Digital. Western Digital said it will resubmit its bid to acquire Toshiba's chip arm, even as it sought a U.S. court injunction to stop Toshiba from inking any deal without its consent. Toshiba has sued Western Digital this week for $1 billion, arguing the U.S. company was interfering with the sale of its prized flash memory business. Stock prices for Toshiba Corporation took a dive following those events midweek, trading at around 272 yen a share today. SK Hynix share prices also fell after rallying on Tuesday to that new 52-week high. It closed at 67,400 won today, down 1.6%.
All right, now let's turn our eyes back to Washington, D.C., where President Moon Jae-in is in the midst of his two-day visit to the White House. Now, many are watching how he will do with, at times, unpredictable U.S. President Donald Trump.
Yeah, you know, it's really hard to ignore, isn't it, that they come from very different backgrounds and have different temperaments. So far, the mission seems to be going well, as President Moon's business delegation did lay out that investment plan worth nearly $13 billion ahead of the summit. Take a look.
A friendly first encounter. Meeting and matching blue ties, Korea's President Moon Jae-in and his wife, First Lady Kim Jong-suk, were welcomed at the White House South Lawn by U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump Thursday evening local time for a dinner in their honor.
President Moon, thank you very much. It's a great honor to have you at the White House and your very beautiful and lovely wife. We appreciate it, and we're going to have tremendous discussions tonight.
Ahead of the first Korea-U.S. summit under the present administrations, a delegation of 52 Korean firms, which includes executives from the country's top 4 conglomerates, presented an investment package amounting to $12.8 billion. In an apparent follow-up to President Trump's February tweet, Samsung Electronics announced plans to pour a combined $1.88 billion through 2020 into an existing Texas semiconductor factory and into building a new home appliance factory in Newberry, South Carolina, its first in the U.S. in 27 years. Samsung's president of consumer electronics was in D.C. himself to seal the deal with South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster.
By securing production bases for home appliances, we'll expand sales in the U.S. market, which leads the sector's trends.
Hyundai Motor said it's earmarked $3.1 billion to invest into research and development, particularly into self-driving eco-friendly cars of the future. The biggest pledge came from SK Group at $4.4 billion that will be spent on expanding its investment in U.S. shale gas. SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won signed an MOU with both General Electric and Continental Resource to work together in developing shale gas fields and bringing their product to Asian, African, and South American markets. LG promised to invest in a washing machine factory in Tennessee while pouring $300 million into a new headquarters building in New Jersey. Several other MOUs were signed, strengthening business and cultural ties between Korea and the U.S. that have seen ups and downs in their 64-year alliance.
Well, it seems like a well-thought-out investment package, and hopefully it lays the groundwork for a better improved relationship between the two countries and administrations.
Right, improved and expanded. SK Group's deal with America's General Electric and Continental Resource on shale and LNG makes sense, given President Moon Jae-in's noted pivot toward cleaner energy here at home, away from coal and nuclear. In fact, Bloomberg reports the state-owned Korea-U.S. Corporation is also looking into potential investments on LNG projects, those in Alaska, Texas, and Louisiana. Korea already imports the 7th most amount of liquefied natural gas from the U.S. So it's this spirit of cooperation that many in Korea are hoping will prevail during the summit talks between Presidents Moon and Trump.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in today.
You bet.
And that wraps it up for today and this week, but we'll be back next week with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks so much for watching and see you soon.